Welcome to the Dan Dillman Live Podcast, where we question the history and mysteries of the past while exploring people and stories from around the world. Join us as we delve into everything from hidden treasures and ancient secrets to the unexplained phenomena capturing our imaginations. Good evening from around the world. My name is Dan Dillman, and we are live. Tonight, I've got a very special guest, good friend, Marc Hoover. Hey, thanks for joining me. Many of you may know who Marc is, but he is the founder and creator of Adventures in History Facebook group. He's an accomplished writer and photographer. And he is, also won an award for his article, Tragedy, Triumph, and Treasure, which won a freelance award in 2021. I also want to say that Marc's an adventurer who loves exploring, looking for lost treasure. Marc is a metal detectorist and a certified scuba diver. His family is renowned for building the Hoover Dam. Little tip that most people probably didn't know. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. It's funny you said that because somebody might believe that. So we'll have to disclaim that right away.
Yeah. I was totally BSing.
I get asked all the time if I'm related to the Hoover vacuum cleaner family. And I tell them, I say, look, if I was related to them, I probably wouldn't be doing all this treasure hunting.
Well, that's sad to find out because I did have a warranty issue with my vacuum. I was hoping to get fast-tracked.
Well, 1-800-ElectroLux.
Well, again, man, it's an honor to have you here. You and I met last year at the Moon Lake Gathering, and I've met so many great people, like you, but it's an honor to have you here. Your story, your adventures, the people that you treasure hunt with, the people that you interact with in your part of the world is amazing. And so I'm super looking forward to us having this discussion, not just you and I, but with those who are watching. So I right away want to give some shots out to the people who are here with us. Taz11, who happens to be the blind bowman. And thanks for joining us, Taz. Snot, good evening to you as well. He says good evening, Dan and Marc. And Cache Valley Detectorist, hello, Dan and Marc. And then Nicholas Burnett, let's go. Thank you guys for joining us. I wanted to bring some things up before we get started because I told folks, at least in my listing, that I wanted to share some breaking news. So for those who haven't been paying attention, there's been some breaking news about some declassified CIA documents related to the Ark of the Covenant. And these documents claim that the CIA, through a covert mission and program, used remote viewing to target the lost Ark of the Covenant. And then supposedly from these documents says not only did they locate it, but then they planned a reconnaissance and recovery mission and have actually recovered the Ark of the Covenant. So have you heard about this, Marc?
I have heard about it. I read the article, and of course, it's one of those things that, so many people have been looking for such a long time. And I guess if it was ever found, especially by a government, we typically wouldn't know that, right? I'm not convinced that they found it. But like you and I talked about before, the CIA is famous for disinformation. So if there's any CIA guys listening, I hope I don't see anybody at my front door tonight.
No. They come at night. And they don't knock.
Exactly. Men in black.
Or they meet you on out when you're out on one of your treasure adventures. They just black vehicles, black helicopters, and men in black show up.
But go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. No. Go.
Well, so for me, it's interesting because I study the Bible, and that's such an important part of Scripture and about how they carried the ark in front of the Israelites as they were going along, and it had the power of God in it. Now we don't know where it ended up after it was destroyed, or the whole city was destroyed, and where it was hidden. But of course, everybody's been looking for it for a long time. But I love the history of the Ark of the Covenant. I think everybody else does too. There's a lot of amazing stories around it.
Yeah, me too. For the funny thing is, for people like you and me and probably a lot of the listeners is, at least, yeah, it sounds like we believe the Ark of the Covenant's real, that it was a real object from biblical times, from ancient times, and that it existed. So I never had the thought that it didn't exist. But for those non-believers out there, or people who have never given any kind of credibility to the Bible or ancient text, for them to hear, sometimes it takes these moments and these government officials to release documents to say, this is real, to absolutely, blow their minds, or at least and open their minds to the fact that, maybe I should have been paying attention to the Bible just a little more, or some of this ancient text, So it's interesting to me about that. I do believe it's clearly possible this is a disinformation, campaign. What I find interesting, which I don't know if many people have made this connection, is Donald Trump has a replica of the Ark of the Covenant at Mar-a-Lago.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is here this declassified information comes out. By the way, I want to tell anyone watching, put a Q in front of the comments. We are broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, so you may not see other people's questions, but definitely put your question in the comments for me and for Mark, or about this subject, and we'll try to. And there's a slight delay. We'll try to share what you're saying or asking or commenting on. So let me get back to really quick before I look at the comments. This connection between the Ark of the Covenant and Donald Trump having a replica, and the fact the CIA documents do not disclose where the Ark has ended up, if they really did recover it, and who has it. Does the government have it? Does the Smithsonian have it? Does Donald Trump have it? Right? Yeah. So you can go see. There's some pictures, of this replica. I imagine it's the replica, unless everyone knows not to touch it if it's the real deal, because, we all saw Indiana Jones. 5 Mile Relic Hunter says, matter of fact, I should be able to share this. Says, hey, Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, we hunted together last weekend in Missouri. Gail and I went up to Missouri and hunted with him, and his wife was up there. We had a great time. We'll dive into that in a little bit, but it's great to see him here.
Okay, thanks, great. And then I snot, not I shot, but I snot. I snot. We're gonna have, I know what you mean, but I'm just wondering why. Why'd you name yourself that? Does it happen every morning? All right. So I snot says Templars. Tim Hogan say they have 6. So they have 6 Arks of the Covenant. Is that what he's saying? Taz 11, because I want to make sure to pop these comments off. Taz 11 says, you won't know what the CIA did with the remote viewing. They kept the seer close under their thumbs, he says.
I believe that.
And Taz also says the Ark is in the 7 caves. So Taz 11, are you saying the Ark was in the 7 caves and the CIA has recovered it? Are you saying the CIA recovered it and put it in the 7 caves? A little clarity would be cool. And then 5 Mile Relic Hunter says it's on Oak Island. Right. It was. Probably was. But, Marty and yeah, go ahead.
And if they find it, the show's over.
Well, that's why they're not saying they found it. They're saying CIA found it. Keeping the dig alive at Oak Island for sure. Right. So, and then Icebot says yes. So I imagine he's saying that that the Templars say that there are 6 Arks of the Covenant, which, if it's a power source, as one of the theories, my theories and many other people's theories suggest, that could make sense, because many pyramids that this object could have been helping to power.
Well, that's, we don't know that, and there's always a possibility. I don't know of any indication that there was more than one, just from biblical text, that it was the Ten Commandments were given to Moses, and that was put into the Ark of the Covenant, and they carried it in before them, and that's where the power of God was. Now, after the city was destroyed and it was lost, I think the general belief is within the Christian community today is as once Jesus came, that there is no need for the Ark of the Covenant and the power of God in a box like that. That was God's presence there, but that's no longer needed. But I've never heard anything about having 6 replicas of, or 6 versions of it. That's just what I know. But there could be. I just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard of this. I'm not a big Templar researcher. Of course, I'm fully familiar with the Templar, and definitely know about their ancient relics that they went after. But I hadn't heard of the 6 either, which is interesting to me. I could understand how that could play. I've got
Yep.
some other theories. Obviously, we've already talked about an untapped source of energy, that spiritual God energy, interdimensional portal or key. Maybe somehow this was once again kind of falls into the power idea or key idea, that it was the power needed to open up portals within the pyramids. And a time capsule, like, which could make sense from the 10 Commandments, ancient wisdom, a container that had this ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom, not only these 10 laws given to man by God, but some other, deeper, more esoteric information that Moses would have had because God gave it to him, and then what was stored inside of the ark.
Right.
So it's just totally cool, right? As the little kid in me, just to hear a government agency, especially a covert one, speaking like this, and it came through a Freedom of Information Act release, makes me kind of excited,
Me too, and I think we're going to see a lot more stuff be released. They I don't know if you heard this today. This is kind of just off the side, that they found out that the second guy who tried to assassinate Trump, actually tried to acquire Stinger missiles in Ukraine while he was there. And the idea was that he would take down the president's plane if he could acquire one of them. So that came out today.
Wow. I only
So
laugh because it's so ridiculous. I'm not laughing because that's a funny thing that he was trying to do. It just shows the ridiculousness of these bad actors.
and I think there's more and more that's going to be coming out on that stuff, but also with JFK, RFK's, RFK Jr.'s father, and Martin Luther King. I think more and more of those classified documents are going to be released as well.
Yeah, well, the same thing. Robert Kennedy Jr. RFK. I don't know why I can't get that out of my mouth. But with that information, I mean, I think a lot of those who dug into what happened and who were there live when it happened knew that there was much more to the story than Lee Harvey Oswald, supposedly doing it. And there was a second shooter, and yeah, so it's sad, man. It's sad. It's sad that all of that happened. It's cool that the information is being released. Kind of shows the shift in in the government right now that some would should be very happy about.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing it come out. And of course, it was supposed to come out in Trump's first term, and he didn't release it for some reason. He decided not to release it. So, things are happening now, and I don't think they're happening by accident. It's just extraordinary, some of the events that we're seeing around the world. And and the other thing that I just want to go back to the Ark of the Covenant for a second. For me, a lot of what I do is, we all have filters. And, I have a filter of, studying biblical scriptures and my own personal experiences. And some of that I don't always share, but we all kind of look at it through that lens of where we're coming from. And so, and I've never shared this, and I probably won't share it tonight, but I had a paranormal experience when I was 18, and it was a very dramatic experience. But that led me on to a journey to look into what happened to me, and why. And from that perspective, I've learned a lot, and researched a lot. So again, I don't talk about it. I don't share that story about what happened. I'll share it with you maybe sometime individually.
Oh, no, no, no! We're sharing it tonight. Now you've opened the floodgates. You start talking paranormal, and I've got to hear it. So now you've got to, without any disrespect. Of course, I can't twist your arm because you're not here physically with me, but you've got to just give me a little bit of this story if you can.
Well, do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait for later on?
Uh, Gosh, choices. Why are you giving me choices?
Well, I'll just give you a snippet of it, and we can talk about it more. But
Okay.
yeah, when I was 18, I was just out of college, and I was working for the Orange County sign department, road department, and I had planned to work a year and then go off to college. And that led off into a lot of different areas, which about my circus experience. But I was working there, and I heard these guys talking about they were just kind of joking about this thing that they would go to this guy's backyard. They'd sit around and talk, and then things would happen. And it was just very intriguing to me. So I said, well, I'd like to see what it is you're talking about. And they said, well, it's a poltergeist. I said, well, what's a poltergeist? And they said, well, that's German for mischievous ghost. And so things happen when we're there. And I said, well, can I see it? And they said, sure, come over. So I actually went over on a Friday night with my girlfriend, and we all sat around in a circle. And so we were sitting there, and I told my girlfriend before we went over, I said, look, I'm not going to say anything to you. I don't want you to say anything to me. And let's just see what we're experiencing, and then just share it. So we were sitting there and just kind of having this conversation. And the very first thing I noticed was two smells. One was like this really strong cigar smoke smell. And then another smell that I noticed was, and it's hard to describe, but I remember it dramatically, was almost like somebody was coming out of the swamp, like swamp water. I don't know if you know what that smell is like, but it was very, very distinct to me. And that was the very first thing I noticed. And then they had told me that things like they would hear a rock bounce off the side of the house. They would never see it, but they would, when it bounced, it would land on the grass, and then they would see it on the grass. So they never saw the front end of it, but it was always on the back end. So somebody looked at me and said, what are you noticing? And I told them, like, well, I smell stuff. And they go, well, we do too. And the next thing I remember this kind of like, it was almost like somebody very lightly with their finger went down my back like this, just down my back. And that was pretty unnerving. And then I remember turning around like this and looking down, and at the base of my back was a quarter. That's all I'm going to share. But that was and everything else happened after that. But
Wow.
that was enough to where it got my attention. A lot of other things happened. So, yeah, that was
Got
that
it. You,
was
you
sort
said,
of my.
yeah, there's some invisible realm activity going on here. I need to get to the bottom of it, and I better get
Well,
on the
and then,
right side of it.
exactly. And when I, now when I watch things like Skinwalker Ranch and stuff like that, and I watch it through a lens of my own experience and my own research, which is pretty extensive. And I had, and I'll just share this with you. And I didn't mean to go off into this direction, but
No, it's
I
my
had,
fault. I said more, please. So,
I had a guy. We were sitting on an airplane one time, and he was reading the paper, and he was reading about there was a story about UFOs, and he said, "Well, do you believe in UFOs?" Of course, this is after I've done all of this, my own personal research and looking into it. I said, "All right, I'm going to ask you three questions, and then I'm not going to answer your questions directly. I'm going to answer your three questions. First question is, what if they, whatever it is not from out there?" That's question number one. Now, question number two is, what if they have been here a lot longer than we have? And number three, what if they're just in a different dimension that we can't see or measure or experience, but they can enter into our dimension at will, but we can't enter into their dimension? I said, so those are the three questions I want you to think about. And he said, I never thought about that. And he was just like blown away. It's like, wow, I mean, these are different questions that people need to ask.
right.
So anyway, so when I look at things and I watch things like Skinwalker Ranch or anything, it's from a lens of things that I've experienced again, and just asking a lot of questions.
Right, and we need to question everything. Is one of my many mottos. Question it all, and I want to make sure to mention a few of the people who have jumped on with us. We've got Tough Run Metal Detecting saying, "Hey, buddy." I imagine that's one of your buddies.
Well, you met him last year. He was at the gathering.
All right, he's our buddy. He's our buddy.
That's James Oakford.
And then 5 Miles is recognizing James, going, "Hey, James." And Mark's loaded with stories, and we're going to get to the bottom of some of them. And you can go into their reality through the portal, Taz11 says. So Taz says that we can jump into their reality. I believe the dreaming can also be a gateway for us to enter into these other dimensions. In fact, it's my opinion that dreaming is entering a dimension of reality for us. So just so much stuff, and I want to get to some of your cool stories, but I do want to bring up the second breaking news, and then we're gonna. So I'm taking us down another little path. So pyramids in Giza. There's these Italian and Scottish researchers. I believe they're Italian and Scottish. Who have claimed to have discovered vast underground city beneath the pyramids of Giza, which could potentially redefine our understandings of that ancient civilization or a pre-Egyptian civilization. They used a technology called SAR, which is basically synthetic aperture radar. I'm no expert on this. I don't know if you have any info on SAR, but which allowed for high resolution three-dimensional imaging of the subterranean structures. What they claim to have found, and they show some of the images from their scans, what appears to be extensive cylindrical structures in chambers beneath the pyramids, which they suggest might be connected to the mythical halls of Amenti. Have you heard about this discovery?
So I've heard about it. I don't have the detail that you have. I've always believed that there would be something down there. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but I studied ancient civilization before I got into treasure hunting. And my own personal theory, without knowing about the details of what you're sharing here, is, and of course, the Egyptologists believe it's all created by the Egyptian civilization, whereas I believe that the Great Pyramid itself and the Sphinx and the hall across from the Sphinx were all pre-Egyptian. There's all kinds of that, and Graham Hancock has written multiple books on this and presents on this. Looking for ancient civilization, has presented overwhelming evidence on this. Now, a lot of the archaeologists don't like him because he's saying things that they don't traditionally believe, but I've always felt like, from my research, there's got to be something there. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all that something would be found underneath the Great Pyramid or the pyramids.
Yeah.
But that particular pyramid, the Great Pyramid, the biggest one, I believe, is actually the oldest and probably the one that was pre-Egyptian civilization. And maybe even the Egyptians came, saw the Sphinx, which was probably the head of a lion, and recarved it into the head of a pharaoh, and then started copying the Great Pyramid by building other pyramids around it. So, but anyway, it's an intriguing story, and I don't know if we'll ever know, but I do believe that could even I even believe that the Great Pyramid could be pre-flood.
Yeah, I agree with you. My belief, my theory has been that the giants of the previous worlds, the Aztecs speak about the giants from the previous world. We can talk biblical giants, we can talk ancient Greek mythology giants. I believe, and the Native American oral history is the giants built these pyramids. At least when
Right.
I speak about natives, speaking about Mesoamerica and the Americas. But I believe it's the case there, and I believe that it's pre-Egyptian. It's Atlantis, this global civilization that clearly was here. To me, it's clear, and for me, so I'm right there with you without getting too crazy with it. But they believe that these researchers believe that maybe the hall, the ancient records of Amenti or Atlantis, with all the ancient records, are down below here, and that's something that I believe. I've heard Edgar Casey speak about one day. Discovery being made underneath. Maybe it was the Sphinx and not necessarily the pyramid, but they're connected underneath for sure. Anyway,
Right.
these great discoveries, and so I'm excited. I'm not quite sure that what they've shared is 100% authentic. I just don't know that. I like to give people their grace to say, hey, they're telling the truth until we know they're lying.
Well, then the question is, will the Egyptians, authorities allow them to go in and do the excavation? And they never
No,
have.
no,
Yeah.
and they're not going to. They're not going. Matter of fact, I think they've already jumped in at some point and said, "Hey, these guys were never allowed into these places, and and they're not allowed to scan from the skies with satellites." You know, so I expect that though from them because they want to be the ones to release any of that. And if it's
Of
something
course.
this major, they no disrespect, and I don't want to throw everyone under the bus in Egypt who's in charge because I don't know who they are, but it seems that they're trying to stick with a narrative anyway, and something like this could be
We
world
changed the entire
changing.
narrative.
Yeah, change the entire narrative of everything about everything. And
Right.
they don't want to be co-signing any of that stuff right now until the global powers say it's okay okay to do so. But I will say that from the images, which I don't have to show right now, but anyone can go search these things. The images show these cylindrical, pillars. I'll just call them pillars that it kind of looks like that go deep and underneath. And to me, if the pyramid is a power, you know, distribution place, energy generating and wireless power distributor, those cylinders are very much like Nikola Tesla's
Interesting.
inventions. They're very much fall in line with. I don't know if you do any gardening, but if you get some copper and spin it around in a little spiral, cylindrical area and stick it into the ground next to your plants, they're gonna, draw energy from the earth and help to grow your fruits and vegetables much bigger and larger and better. So
I
anyway,
didn't know.
it just gives me all these little glimpses of like, yeah, I can believe it. But it is breaking news. It's not breaking today, but it's been out there for a minute. And I think that people should know about it, do your own research. And if it all turns out to be that these people have actually used this new technology, imagine the places that I need them to scan for me with all of my treasure locations. I need them to contact me, and don't charge me, but I need you to do some scans, and we need to check out, some areas in the Grand Canyon and a few other places throughout
There
the
you go.
Americas.
There you go.
Let's see. Did anyone jump on and say anything? You can go into their reality through the portal. The Hall of Records is nothing next to the records at the Seven Caves. I'm with you, because the records at the Seven Caves, well, I would say, in fact, that the records at the Seven Caves would be those ancient records of Aslan, of the Mexica, of the ancient Maya, Aztec. And so, for sure, they would be just as amazing. All right, so enough of all my driving down different roads to end up back here. Mark, tell me your origin story. How did you get into treasure hunting, metal detecting, and what the hell were you doing on that high wire in that photo I saw?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. So, first of all, Dan, I'll say that, and I think you will probably agree with us. When you're a treasure hunter, you're a metal detectorist, you're a seeker looking for something lost. It's either in your DNA or it's not, right? I
Yep.
mean, when I was a kid, it was in my DNA, but I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know what DNA was, but I knew that my first experience of like understanding that I wanted that experience or I wanted to seek was we had an archaeologist in Florida that took us out to some Indian mounds, and this was before it was all shut down. And they took us out, and we were a group of kids, and they said, "Hey, we know that the Indians were here. There's oyster shells, there's mounds here. If you guys dig here, you'll probably find some pottery." So we started digging, and 15 minutes later, everybody's gone except for me. All the kids ran off, and when they went off and were playing and running around and jumping around, 2 hours later, I'm still digging pottery. I had a box of pottery, and I found an oyster shell with a hole drilled in it. I mean, a conch shell with a hole drilled in it. I thought that was the coolest thing that you could have. These other kids could care less. So I knew at that point, looking back, that's where it really started. That I understood that it was in my DNA. But as a kid, the things that interested me the most were I went to a circus one time and I watched the high wire, I watched the trapeze, and I thought, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But I also started following the adventures of Mel Fisher. As a kid, they would every once in a while they would print a story of this guy who was looking for lost treasure of the Senora de Atocha, right? The Atocha. And he hadn't found it, but they would always print a story. So I would always look for these stories. And of course, we didn't have the internet back then, so I'd read everything I could. But that kind of really intrigued me. So, fast forward a little bit, I go to high school, I get in, and I do sports like everybody else, or like a lot of people. But I had this in the back of my mind. I had this passion that I wanted to be a circus performer, believe it or not. But I also had a passion to be a treasure hunter. And so I knew that Mel Fisher was down in South Florida. And as soon as I graduated from high school, I went and got my certification for scuba diver. And my plan was I was going to I was going to go down there and talk to them and say, "Hey, I want to work for you, whatever." And I guess that's the way a lot of guys did. They got certified, they went down, and they didn't get paid. Every once in a while, they'd find a coin, and he'd pay them in with a real or something like that. But my mother really wanted me to go to college. She was absolutely determined that my brother and I get our college degree. So a lot of people don't know this, but Florida State University has a student circus. I don't know if you knew that, but it's an
No.
actual real and three ring circus. And so I decided, well, I'm going to go there, get my college degree, and join the circus there, learn all these things, and do all of this. So that's where I went after a year of working. I saved enough money up, went to college, and I joined that. And what was interesting about that was there was a guy. Well, when I went there, they said, "Hey, you if you want to be a performer, you have to put together an act, you have to practice, you have to do all this stuff." Well, a friend of mine from high school was on the FSU swim team, and for whatever reason, he quit. He said, "Hey, I just don't want to do this anymore." And I said, "Well, hey, like I'm trying to get into this circus over here. Why don't you and I put together an act?" So we did, and we worked on it. We practiced, and so I did a number of different things. But my main thing was walking high wire, and we got hired during the summer. I worked 2 summers, 3 summers at what was called then Marriott's Great America up in Waukegan or Gurnee, Illinois. And the first year it opened was 1976, which would be 50 years next year. And I so kind of aging myself here, but we worked there the first 3 years during the summer. That's actually how I actually paid my way through college, is working there during the summer. But I learned a lot of skills, and my plan was to go professional. And things, the Lord just changed my direction, and that ended up not happening. So he went professional, and I didn't.
Wow. Oh, the guy that
Yeah,
you were
his name's
stand.
Bill Whitmire. Yeah, Bill went became a professional circus performer, traveled all over the world. He was also a trapeze artist, so he did trapeze, and then came back to Orlando. And we haven't seen each other in I think 30 years, and I don't think he lives that far from me. So probably after this, I'll go, hunt him down
Go.
and find him.
Yeah, when you sent me that picture, man, at first I'm going, "What is this?" What he accidentally sent me a picture of a circus routine.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that's me riding the bike on the high wire, and then he's
Yeah,
standing
that's
on.
awesome. No. I figured it out once I paid attention to your bio and the other stuff. I was like, holy cow, dude. So that's why you would be perfect for, you're not scared of heights, so we could lower you down some major cliffs in Utah and lower you down into some caverns.
I do it in a heartbeat. If and the thing is when you do that, something like that, and I have to say this, we're extremely safety cautious. We have to learn how to fall off the wire before we can actually do it. You have to learn how to fall into the net. When you're carrying all that equipment, even if you have a net, and we weren't allowed to perform without a net because it's a student circus. But that pole that I'm carrying is 50 pounds. That
Wow.
bike is probably 30 pounds. So you go into the net and that thing comes on you, it could hit you in the head and kill you. So we
Wow.
have to be extremely cautious, and we have to know how to fall. We have to communicate really well. And so, yeah. But from that, everything that I do, I love the adventure. And I'll jump into this. I'm probably more of an adventurer than I am a treasure hunter. My motto is have adventure, will travel. And you probably know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yep. Love
So
it.
if anybody's listening and they got a great adventure, hey, I retired last year in July. So if you got something, I'm game. But yeah, so, and I forget where I was going with that, but lowering me down. And so I would do that if we had all, I knew that it was all safe. We had all the right people that had all the gear and everything was done properly. I would do it. I would go down.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to read some comments that some of the folks have. Uh, Great American was there in 1978. That's Taz 11. Tough Run. Metal Detective said that's pretty cool. 5 Mile High. 5 Mile Relic Hunter says, "Is there any video out there, Mark? Is there any video of you doing the circus act?"
There is, but it's all on 8 millimeter film, and I've got to get it transferred over. So I don't think look, 76, 77, 78, that's all pre-internet,
Yeah,
pre,
yeah, yeah.
and it was all 8 millimeter film. And so one of my friends transferred it onto a cassette tape, so I have it on cassette, but it's not out in the internet where you can look at it.
Well, those 8mm films, I think if you go to any Mike's camera, I don't know what, you probably got something similar out there, they'll take that and convert it right for you to a digital file.
Right.
You might go
Yeah, I
viral.
know. There's some kind of a service where you can just send it all in and they'll transfer it all over.
Yep. Well,
You,
I prefer the
can you
local.
show, can you
Huh?
show that picture? Can you show that picture?
Yeah, you know what? I probably can. Let me go find it really quick. Oh, and also someone had a question. Don't yeah. 5 Mile Relic Hunter, your buddy wants to know, Mark, I've often wondered, what is that above the door? A bow? Question mark.
It's a bow, and that's a deer. That's a bow. And when I was metal detecting one time, I found one of the sheds. And put
Let's
that up
see.
there. But yeah, I just bought a longbow because I wanted to learn how to, shoot. And I put a target up in my backyard and started shooting.
I just had that picture. I just filed it, but hold on. I know where to look to
Well,
find
I'm
it.
gonna look and see if I might have it here anywhere.
Hold on here as gallery. I just need to look at this as a gallery. Here we go. And all right, I got it. I think I
Oh, you
have
got
it.
it?
I think so. I think if I put it here on my desktop, hold on here. I need to close this. I think I need to close this. All right, if I'm lucky. Oh man. See, if I was set up beforehand, I would have made this a smooth transition. Okay, let's try this. Let's see. Share screen. Bam!
There it is.
There it is, folks. There it is. That is the man, the myth, the legend, the world famous circus performer, Marc Hoover. That's awesome, man. Awesome. Let's see.
Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you got it. Luisa Santa Rosa joined us. Did he say Circus College or University in Florida? Does it still exist?
It absolutely does. It's called the FSU Flying High Circus. You can actually get 1 credit hour by taking a class, and then if you want to stay in and be a performer, then you have to put together an act, and then you have to work on the different skills. And they'll train you. They have trainers there that'll do all the training. In fact, they have a home show every year, and the home show is coming up this month. I don't know which week it is, but they have 2 weekends of home shows, and they have an actual circus tent, which, by the way, was completely destroyed last year in the hurricanes that came through North Florida. So I think they've recently got a new one. But yeah, we traveled around the Southeast and did performances, set up the tent and everything. Had a great time.
Well, that's it. So that answers Luisa's comment, and she even said LMAO. I don't want to say it. I wondered the same thing about the bow. So she was wondering about the bow above your door. Taz11 says, this is crazy. I am a bow hunter as well. We both were in Great America in the mid 70s.
So Taz is probably telling me his age. I'll show you one other thing.
Yeah, and then tough run metal detector said this might be it. That's what he just said. He also has a great stuffed alligator head.
So of course, in Florida, we're going way off the treasure hunting, but
Yeah.
we're getting into all
You
this
got more
stuff.
time than the hour, right? Because I know you said an hour, but we're 15 minutes to that point.
We'll go as long as you want.
Okay.
I was actually, in the realm of adventure, I was presented with the opportunity of becoming a alligator trapper. And I did it for 10 years. And so what I did was it's a lottery. I applied every year. And what they do is they give you a week and a makeup week, and then they tell you the body of water that you can hunt on. And every year I would hire a trapper, a year-round nuisance trapper would take me out, but it was my license. So I would always take one of my kids and somebody who's never been before, and we would go out at night and we would spend all night on the water trapping alligators.
Wow. Wow. Real life. Gosh, what's that show on
Those swamp people.
Swamp People? Yes.
Well,
Did you got?
they shoot the gators. We're not allowed to do that.
Huh? Why
So,
not?
they'll take it. Well, in Florida, the law is you go out half an hour before sundown, and it goes till half an hour after sun up. It's always at night. And when you trap them, you can use in Florida, you can use a bang stick. Now it's got a bullet in it. It could be like a
Gotcha.
357 or one of those bullets. When you get them up close enough, then you can use a bang stick. But you can't run around like they do in Louisiana and shoot them with a gun.
Wow. Wow. Crazy.
So
All
the
right. Let's.
adventure is getting them up close to the boat, close enough to where you can use the bang stick. That takes
Right.
a while.
Right. Dangerous, man. Dangerous. I
It's
definitely, I'm not scared of lions and tigers and bears and alligators, but I surely won't. Not planning to go wrestle with them.
Well, we never wrestled with them. I can assure you that we never wrestled with them, and it's not really that dangerous. I mean, when you have somebody that knows what they're doing and they have all the right equipment, it's like
Hey,
anything else.
that's only if the boat don't sink, buddy. Okay, because if you're on a boat that strikes a leak and you're out in the middle of the of alligator country, let me tell you something. It gets dangerous real quick.
All you have to do, Dan, is swim faster than the guy next to you.
There you go. Well, see, I'm scarred because when I was a little kid, my uncles, God bless them, two amazing treasure hunters, researchers, my grandfather, my uncles, they made me watch Faces of Death. So any of you who have watched the movies Faces of Death, they're showing me this stuff. I couldn't been 4 or 5 years old the first time they showed it to me. And, a guy jumps out of an airplane in a parachute and he just by luck lands. Have you seen this?
No, I
He,
haven't.
oh,
I'm
dude,
writing it
it's,
down.
yeah, he lands in a alligator farm and is just completely eaten. So Faces of Death should not be shown to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 year olds. It is actual live, incidences where people died. So anyway, fun
Well,
fact.
the reality is an alligator is more afraid of you than you are of them. There's a million, and they estimate there's 1.5 million alligators in Florida. I know of one lake that I hunted on that had over 22,000 alligators in it. And they lose their fear when they're fed, like if somebody feeds them, they lose their fear. But if you take an alligator and a crocodile, the crocodile will come after you. An alligator will go away from you
Mm.
unless you are disturbing their nest of young alligators, or they feel like they're trapped, like you've got them trapped and they've got no way out but to attack you. Otherwise, they will go away. Alligators will always try to get away from you unless they've been fed by somebody and they lose that fear. But
Oh,
on the other hand, a crocodile, you have no chance against a crocodile. First of all, they get up to 20 feet long and they will come after you. And so always pick the alligator if you have a choice.
right. Well, and from what I understand, at least the one hope, because I've run this scenario through my mind. If I ever got confronted with an alligator, I was just going to hold its mouth shut because I figured if it got me and closed its mouth, I'm in big trouble. But if I could get to holding its mouth shut first, I might have a chance.
You won't have a chance.
Yeah. All right. Let's read off a
All
few of
right.
these other comments, and then we're gonna get to some nitty gritty treasure stories. Some nitty
Okay.
gritty
What you
treasure.
have?
Get down. All right. When did? Let's see. Wow. Great photo. So great photo. Um, wow, that's awesome. When was it start? Okay. When did it start? Louisa, you're gonna have to resend that question because I'm reading it and it's just not making sense to me. Could be me. Cache Valley Detectorist, LOL. Tammy, what's up, Tammy? Tammy says, I was going to say, what about the lizard people? She wants to go down a route of talking about the lizard people.
I'm not talking about lizard people. You can talk about lizard people. I'm not talking
Well,
about
you know what?
lizard
We'll
people.
have another show, Tammy, about the lizard people, the ones that are living, underneath Los Angeles, especially. We could talk about those, but some of the other ones as well. Enjoy the thrill, Louisa. Seen them? Oh, seen them. Faces of Death. I remember. Okay. And eat. Yeah. Also on the Faces of Death. Yes, Louisa, they did eat monkey brains live. The poor little monkey was alive, and they clubbed him. And shocking to watch as a little kid, but in a weird kind of way, I thanked my uncles for sharing that with me.
That's
All
probably
right.
where they got that from Indiana Jones, where they did that whole scene with the monkey. You know, it was the, I guess it was the monkey brain.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if Faces of Death came out first, and then Indiana Jones and George Lucas had seen the Faces of Death, said, "Hey, let's put this in the movie." But oh yeah,
Right.
that poor little monkey didn't have a chance, man. Anyway, I'm gonna
All
stop
right.
talking about it. But go watch it if you haven't watched it.
I wrote it down. I was going to go watch it.
What would it be called? Unfiltered National Geographic, you know, animals. All right, so I want to ask you to get into this treasure stuff. One,
Okay.
are you current? You know, what is the most recent adventure? So it's a two-part question, or two questions in one. Or I'm just asking two questions. One, what is the latest adventure you've gone on in your treasure hunting? And then what is really, your favorite treasure hunting story? So two questions, doesn't matter to me which one you go with first.
Well, I mean, so I've got the year planned out. I mean, what we do is in the metal detecting world, a lot of people know this, and of course, Tough Run Metal Detecting, who's on listening, there are different events that are putting on, like the Gathering in Utah. And so we get invited to those, and in the gathering that you and I went to, we were both guest speakers,
Yeah.
and that was a completely different experience because we were there as guest speakers. We were there meeting people, which was great. The day after it was over, Casey Dillman, who was selling Excalibur shovels, took Gary Penta and I out to Wyoming to an old gold mining, I mean, an old ghost town that if you were just driving down the road, you would never know that there was a town there. And we drove up and then we started metal detecting, and, it was obvious there was a town there. So when we go to an event, we're looking for opportunities to go out and metal detect old ghost towns. And that's where James and I met. We were in Idaho. We were invited to an old gold mining ghost town that was there in the late 1800s. It was a very large town in the 1800s, but it burned down. The fire burned everything down in the 1930s. But we went out there and just had a great time metal detecting the town, finding all kind of bottles. And in fact, one of my coolest finds was this fire was so hot that the glass, all the glass in the town was completely broken or melted. And I was metal detecting that town, and I got a signal, and I reached down, and there was a little silver metal top, and it was attached to a completely intact bottle. And I thought, wow, this is cool. There's no other bottles around here, and so it was next to like a foundation. And when I dug it out, and it said Panades of Paris. So I'm thinking, well, what in the world? Like, what is a perfume bottle doing out in mining ghost town? And so we did the research. My wife did the research, and we found out that Panade was very famous in Paris back in the 1830s and became world famous by the late 1800s. And so she found a poster from a 1900 exposition, and there was a barber sitting over a guy. And what the bottle was that I found was not perfume; it was hair tonic. So we figured that out.
Is
And
any
I could
left
get
in there?
and then as we researched it, and it was completely, it had the little screw on top, so that was cool. But then we found out that if you go into Walmart today, Panade products are still sold in Walmart. So, you just go back on the history, you find one little item or one item like that, and you do the research, and it's really cool. So, I have to do be completely transparent and I wrote that article about my friend that found all that treasure on the beach in Sebastian, and it was all Spanish treasure. And that's what the presentation I did out in Utah was on the 1715 fleet, and they're still looking for that treasure now. And I've metal detected the beach, and I have dove on the treasure site wreck, but I am not a working diver. I have not been hired by one of the boats to go and be a working diver. They start this month. There's a treasure hunters cookout on April 26th, and then all the divers and the captains and everybody will get together and they'll have this cookout. And then during the summer the boats will go out every day and they'll dive down. And my hope is this summer, now that I'm retired, is to be able to hook on with one of the captains and at least get some experience going out and actually diving for treasure. I've been on the sites, I've dove on the sites, but I've not worked the sites. And you cannot work the site unless you are hired by one of the boats and you are approved to do that. Otherwise, if I just went out there and dove, it would be a felony offense, and I don't
Uh,
want to do.
I was going to ask. They must have some kind of permits that allow them to do that.
Well, what it is in Mel. This goes all the way back to Mel Fisher, uh, and when he started finding treasure, the state of Florida got really interested, and they seized all of his treasure. And I don't know if you remember my presentation, but when they seized all of his treasure, he had some really good lawyers on his team. Everywhere along the court, they lost. Went all the way to the Supreme Court and won.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court made the state of Florida give it all back to Mel Fisher. And so what Mel Fisher said was, look, here's what I'll do. I'm not required to do this, but I will give the state of Florida 20% of everything I find. So that kind of became the standard. So today, the area of the 1715 fleet, which is further north than where Mel was with the Atocha, it's licensed to a company called the Queen's Jewels LLC, and they have the rights from the state of Florida. And everything they find, they tag, they bring up, and at the end of the season, it's all cataloged, logged, and the state of Florida gets 20%. Queen's Jewels gets 80%. And then Queen's Jewels has to pay the boat captains, and the boat captains have to pay the divers. And the way they pay them is with the fines that they make that season. And they have investors. Investor, you can invest as little as $2,000 to be an investor. But at the end of the season, if your boat captain hasn't found anything, you're not going to get anything.
And it
If he
doesn't count
hits,
towards the next season.
nope. No, it's invested every season. So if your captain finds the mother lode that year, like they did in 2015, then those investors are going to, make a really good return on their investment.
So they get
But
a
it all,
percent. Oh,
I'm
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to ask. So they get the investors get a set percentage from whatever their money they're investing in, gives them a certain percentage of the find. And then I've got another question. How do they pay the government their 20%? Are they just saying, "Hey, here's 20% of the treasure," or do you know if they estimate the value and then sell some stuff? Hey, because they could sell one thing maybe to equal the 20% and then give it to the. Do you know how that works? If I'm
Yeah,
making sense.
yeah, absolutely. So the state of Florida looks at all of it and they appraise everything. And the state of Florida says, okay, let's just pick a number, $100,000. Let's say it's worth $100,000. I don't know what the number is. One year it could be 3 million. They look at all of it and they appraise everything. And they have a state archaeologist working with Queen's Jewels LLC that looks at everything. They tag it all. The state gets first pick. So if they appraise it all, and they've already appraised each individual items, they'll take 20% of the treasure
Mm.
based on the appraisal that they give. Now, I don't know this. I don't know all the laws and all the legalities, but my understanding is if it's a really intricate thing, a beautiful item. It's a very unique thing. Usually the state will take that and
Wow.
put it in the state museum. Now you can go to Tallahassee. It's not on display, but I believe if you have legitimate interest, you can ask them and they will show you some of the treasure that's been found. Um, but yeah, so the state gets theirs, and then Queens Jewels gets the 80%, and then each of the boat captains gets a percentage based on what their particular boat has found, based on the agreement that they've made with Queens Jewels LLC.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty awesome. And so an opportunity for those who would love to go out and treasure hunt but can't do it. Technically, they can invest in some treasure hunting and possibly lose their money,
They could,
or they could win big.
or they could go out like my friend did with a metal detector and be at the right place at the right time and find $500,000 worth of treasure on the beach. Because in the other law in the state of Florida is between the dunes and the low water mark or the low tide mark, if you can metal detect that, whatever you find is 100% finders keepers.
Man, and your buddy found $500,000 worth.
Yeah, so when I say that, I mean that's just estimate because every year the value goes up and up and up. But he found a number of gold escudos, royales. He found ship spikes. He found musket balls. Um, yeah, I passed it around. You know, it's interesting. His name, by the way, his name is Jim Tippett. He goes by Jimmy Crossbones. Great name. He looks like a pirate. He would be a modern day pirate. Great guy. We love I love detecting with him when I have a chance. But the galleons went down on July 31st, 1715, right? And there were 1,500 men that were killed, and there's a whole story about it which I presented. But there was a survivors camp, and there were people that came up and they were survived. But also that hurricane pushed those galleons way up. And in 2015, when they found all that treasure in the water, it was in about 10 feet of water or less. And when Jim found this, I don't know where it is, and I don't know exactly when he found it. That's a closely guarded secret. And I agreed to write the article on the contention that he would not share that with me because he doesn't want that information to get out.
Yeah,
But
makes sense. Trade secrets.
exactly, and what I discovered was right before he found it. Well, let me back up a second. So it's natural to assume that whenever there's a hurricane in Florida, especially one that crosses the beach, what happens after the hurricane goes through? Everybody runs to the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, the hurricane blew off all the sand. Let's go find all the treasure, right? That's what happens. And it
and
works.
I was going to say, and they usually find something, don't they?
Yeah, they do find something. Now, in this particular case, it was not a hurricane. There were two back-to-back northeast storms, really severe northeast storms. Came one and then the other one. Literally took off about 12 to 15 feet of sand. That's a lot of sand off the beach. And I remember going over to our timeshare on the beach, and our bottom step to the timeshare, it was about 8 feet from the bottom step down to the sand. I'm like, where did all the sand go?
Wow.
Well, so they were digging, so they were detecting further south than that. But what I would tell you is, from my perspective, he had a once in a 300-year opportunity because that sand was taken off. He hunted, he detected for about 2 weeks, and then the sand started coming back in. And if you go to that same general area in South Florida, he'll tell you today there's about 15 feet of sand over where he was detecting. So it's a very, very unusual circumstance. But he found it, and he invited a couple of other guys that found a few pieces as well. So it makes a great story.
Yeah.
But it also, people will say to me, Mark, can you really find treasure with a metal detector? And my answer is, it's generally not a profitable proposition, as you know, because it could be expensive.
Oh yeah,
Uh, but it is possible to find treasure with a metal detector, and this is
yeah,
proof.
yeah. And beaches are a great place. My father-in-law, has been metal detecting forever, I imagine. But he used to take my wife Gina. You met Gina, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when she was little, and of course her dad still does it today. His name's John. And he has found on the beach in Alameda, California, not too far from us, he has found rings and jewelry. He has found so much stuff. My wife, she's made me take her to the beaches, and she has found with her metal detector jewelry. So now, like you said as well, I will say this: there's more times we found nothing but bottle caps and beer cans and junk, basically, than we found stuff. But oh my God, absolutely, you can find stuff with a metal detector. And your buddy hit the mother load, hit the jackpot.
Yeah, here's
Um,
jackpot with it, and it's not just well. And when I try, you can always find something with a metal detector. What I'm telling them, what they're asking me is, can you really find treasure like this kind of treasure? With gold coins and everything.
yes.
And and I tell them, look, it's extremely rare, but I know people. And the other thing that I learned, Dan, and you probably know this too, once this article came out and got people started talking about it and all this treasure. A buddy of mine came to me and actually did a video of it. You can go on YouTube now and look at it. It's called "Feet in the Sand." About a 15-minute video, and Matt Howell, a friend of mine, brought a cinematographer, a Hollywood cinematographer, down and actually did a beautiful 15-minute video of Jim telling the story and actually interspersing clips of his uh, camera that he
GoPro.
was, yeah, GoPro into the film, showing when he found stuff, some of the expletives deleted uh, when he found it and couldn't believe what he had just found, gold coin. But anyway, that what I started learning was it's my belief, based on my experience now, that 9 out of 10 treasures that are found are never disclosed because once you disclose it, government wants in on it. Landowners like, oh, that land belongs to me, or whatever the case may be. But people come out of the woodwork, putting a claim on whatever they find. So
Oh yeah.
Terry Carter, as you know, has collected all those stories. Some of those stories he won't share until the person passes away.
Yeah.
So I really believe there's a lot of these stories out there that that are now, some of them are starting to be told, almost like classified documents of the government. We have treasure hunters that
Yep.
have a lot of stories that they will tell, but they don't want them to be told until after they've passed away.
Yeah, and a lot of people learn the hard way. I mean, my grandfather always wanted to do things right, and so one time we discovered, he discovered, um, ancient. Gosh, how am I gonna forget what it's called? It's only because I'm off the cuff. Um, Amber. He found
Okay.
some massive. The amber was just a massive. Just a large crazy. And so, my uncles, of course, said, "Hey, let's get this thing. Let's get this thing out of here tonight. Let's go." Oh no, boys, we can't do that. We gotta notify the authorities, and this is on public land, and we're gonna notify them, and we're gonna do this right. Well, they notified the authorities, and within 48 hours, it was gone. Gone. So, yeah, people learn the hard way. I mean, some of the things that we're searching for are so epic, so big. We have a plan in place to get media, news and media and streaming, and now with Starlink, we can stream from anywhere, damn near in the world,
Yeah.
and stream that stuff so it can't be stolen, hidden, and taken
Right.
away from the public view. But it does happen, and I understand those other treasure hunters who have found and made discoveries, who've kept their mouth shut because they've been robbed, and it's not cool. It's not
Well,
cool to destroy ancient artifacts either, but
that's true. Yeah. And with Jim, I mean, the thing with his article is it was 2 years after he found it before he wanted to make sure that he was completely in the clear. It was okay to tell the story. And when he approached me, he said, "Hey, I got a story and you're going to hear about it. So I want you to tell the story." So I did the 6 months of research on the 1715 fleet, did all the photography, and I learned about him as a person, and put all that together in the story. But it was 2 years after he
Wow.
found it before it really was, disclosed. But anyway, you were asking me a question about one of my adventures, and so when we talk about treasure, I mean, treasure comes in all kinds of things, right? And my wife doesn't metal detect, but she loves to dig bottles. She loves to dig buttons. We've been to a button dump in Massachusetts. I don't know if you've ever heard of a button dump, but that's pretty cool. Um, Native American artifacts,
Yeah.
fossils. We do the megalodon teeth. I raffled off one of the megalodon teeth
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah. Those are awesome.
And so, I look at all that stuff. To me, that's treasure, right? So we were in Arkansas. We were at one of these events, and it was actually a seated event where they put out they bury all the treasure, the coins and tokens and all that, and you go look for it. But they said, "Hey, if you're a sponsor, we got something special for you on Monday. We would like to take you to the Saline River, and there's a known Native American site there that this gentleman owns, and he's going to allow us to look for Native American artifacts." Now, to me, that's treasure, right?
Right.
So my wife and I, we took our sifter over there, and James, Tough Run Metal Detecting, who's on here, was with us. And so, so we had these sifters, and I was digging, and my wife Gail was, sifting and all this. We did this all day long. They gave us lunch, and we found, arrowheads, and somebody found, I believe, an axe blade, I believe. But it was genuinely a sight. Three and about we were all going to leave around 3:30. Around 3 o'clock, I was so tired. I was sitting on the edge of my little hole that you start the hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm sitting there and I'm just tired. And I got this 3-pronged thing and I'm just kind of like scraping the edge. And all of a sudden, something fell into my hole. It's like one of these things like, where'd this come from? And honestly, it had mud all over it. I wasn't even sure what it was. And so I took it and I handed it to my friend KG, who's KG and Ringy from the National Geographic show, The Diggers. They were with us, and he was on not too far from me. His eyes got big, and he goes, "You know what you have?" And I said, "Nope." He goes, "You got a Native American knife." I said, "Really?" And so this is it. It's a 5-inch knife blade.
Oh, beautiful, man.
If I get this
Beautiful.
right. Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yes. That's the real
So
deal.
yeah, so what was interesting is there's a gentleman there in Arkansas. His name's Sam Johnson, who's been doing this for 50 years. He trades all over the world with Native American artifacts. Probably one of the world's foremost authorities, especially in that area. Um, and he found out about it, and he said, "Mark, I do sort of COAs, certificates of authenticity." He said, "I usually charge for them." He goes, "What I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a COA for that." And so it's 4,000 years, about 4,000 years old, late archaic, and it's 5 inches long. And, I just felt blessed. I mean, I just literally felt blessed that this landed in my hole, and the circumstances around how we ended up where we were at. So anyway, that was a treasure. That was one of my adventures, and that's probably one of my favorite finds right there.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm going to tell you something you don't know. That is actually your blade from when you lived back at that time, your previous life, dude. It came back to you.
That may be. Who knows?
Yep.
I know I have some. I know I have some Native American heritage, but I don't know if I was back in Arkansas right then. It's probably me working that blade.
I'm joking, but not joking. You know I'm an ancient mystery theorist. It's
I
just a
know you
theory.
are. I
It's
know
just
you
a
are.
theory. Just a
I just
theory.
haven't gone that far into it yet.
I want to first of all, that all of that stuff is amazing, and you're fine, and doing that type of treasure hunting and having the having the I don't even know how to phrase it right. Basically, being blessed to be able to go out there and dig and to find this today, dude. There's still things for people to discover, still things for people to find, and treasure is not always the gold and silver. It's these objects that you're holding in your hand, the objects from those who came before you. Right? To me, man, it's better than gold, really. For me, I mean, I wouldn't mind having the financial return on the gold stuff, but nothing can replace holding that history in your hand, man.
Well, in holding the history in your hand, and then my hope is to be able to pass it down. My goal is to teach my kids and grandkids the love of adventure, the love of treasure hunting, and the love of history, so that
Yeah.
when they grasp, when they grasp that when I pass that down to them, that they treasure it as much as I did, and that they pass it down. Which brings me probably to my next story, if you don't mind, if you want me to
No,
tell you another story.
I do, but
Unless you
really
got a
quick.
question. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, not a question. I'm just going to ring in and make sure the people who are watching us don't feel that they're left out and they're not
Oh,
important, because
okay,
you
yeah.
guys are.
Yeah, sure.
So let me go back here. What an incredible trip! Trips. That was an incredible trip, and multiple trips until we lost access. One day I'll dive down there. That's what Tough Run
That
Metal
was
Detecting
James.
said.
Yeah, he was
Yep.
with me there. Yep.
Cache Valley Detector has said that would be a bucket list opportunity. Then James again said it's an amazing to see in person, right place, right time. No, that was his. That was his from previous life. Bob G says, I detected the Alameda Beach a few times back in the 70s with a friend, found a few small things. Well, my father-in-law must have got all that gold and jewelry that you missed out on, Bob. But there's still stuff there. Hey, people lose things all the time.
All the time.
Cache Valley Detectorist says, if you look at the famous treasure hunters, Doc Noss, Jimmy Sierra, Von Mueller, they all had tragedy from talking. Man, you ain't lying. Tough Run Metal Detective says, new friends are treasure too.
Yeah,
I
we talked
agree.
about that. Yeah, so James and I became friends when I went out to Idaho. And I consider him one of my best friends now. We literally talk every day.
Wow.
Uh,
And then
and
he also said digging in Arkansas was amazing. Not to cut you off, but I just want to make sure
Yeah,
you
yeah,
heard that.
no, I mean, but we talk every day. But we try, and we went to a friend of mine's gold mine in Montana. We hunted there one time, so we've got these adventures all over. But what I was going to tell you, one thing with going back to the Jimmy Crossbones treasure is it doesn't come out of the bank very. I mean, it doesn't come out of the vault very often. Like when I was doing the story, he had to go to the vault, bring it out, lay it all out. Well, what happened was when they brought the videographer in to do the video for beneath our feet in the sand, James was with me. So we went over to their house while they were doing it, and James got to hold all the gold,
Wow.
which I had already done. But he will, I think he will confirm what I'm about to say is, and you probably can relate to this as well. I don't know why. But when you hold that gold in your hand, all those gold coins, and you know where it came from, there's just a weird feeling. I don't know if weird is the right word. It's different. It's different than anything I've ever experienced. And when you hold that gold in your hand, it's just a different experience. And I can understand how people could get gold fever
Oh yeah.
just looking at the gold, seeing the gold or whatever. But it was an interesting thing for me just to hold it and to realize it felt different than anything I've ever held before.
And I imagine that treasure was the Mexica, the Aztec treasure, still coming out of southern, out of the Americas.
Yeah,
Those
it's all
treasures.
from South America, and of course it comes up in that particular case they had been gathering it for 3 years and sent two different uh, uh, fleets of galleons to go pick it up.
Right.
The king was going to take all that treasure and pay for the wars. And he also had a dowry that he had to give to his betrothed, and that's why they call it Queen's Jewels, because all the jewels for her went down with everything, so they call it Queen's Jewels. They've never found the Queen's Jewels, by the way. They found lots of
It
treasure, but they've never.
hasn't been reported found.
Exactly. I know the people that found individual pieces of emerald. In fact, I talked to a guy today who actually has one of the boats, and they found a very, very large emerald, I believe in 23.
Wow.
And so, but in terms of the large amount of like a big chest full of emeralds and rubies or whatever, but yeah, it was 3 years worth, 11 galleons, and it all went down. And
Just
so,
amazing. Just can you imagine? I mean, we can't imagine, but can you imagine that all the way from 1519, 1520, all the way to the 1700s, that how much treasure, gold, jewels, precious metals, artifacts that were just, I mean, dude, that's 100 years worth of them getting the treasure from the Americas. 100 years worth, at least, right? At least.
yeah, and a lot of those galleons actually did get back, because there was a
Yeah.
regular trade route, up, around California, up Florida, coast of Florida. But just real quick before I forget, I want to answer two quick questions. People always ask me, "What's the best treasure you've ever found?" There's no doubt it's my wife. I mean, we just want to throw that in there. We've been married 43 years. She loves going on adventures with me when she can. She doesn't like metal detecting, but she likes, engaging with people, helping, whatever, meeting people. Gives me lots of great ideas. So we do that together. And then the people and the friends that I make, like you and like James and 5 Mile Relic Hunter, all of those folks. I mean, I've made some amazing friendships around the world, and I'm sure
Wow.
you have too.
Yeah.
And so those are the greatest treasures, because at the end of the day, we're only temporary stewards of all this treasure, Dan, right? Because
Yep.
when we die, it's going to go to somebody else, and somebody else may dig it up 200 years from now. Who knows? Right?
Yes.
So the friendships that we make, our families, those are our greatest treasure. These are our adventures. We're finding this, and of course, you may find a treasure that would be life changing, and that's great. But not everybody can do that. But I love to tell the stories too. Like, so if somebody has a story, like what Jim shared with me, I'll be more than happy to tell their story. But yeah, so I wanted to share that. But here's what I was going to tell you. So people are always asking, like my wife is with me, and they're always asking me, well, tell me this story or whatever. And I said, well, let me tell you a story. My wife, Gail, her last name is Howland, Howland. Howland, and then she married me, Gail Howland Hoover. She's the daughter of 11 generations of sons of a man who came over to America on the Mayflower.
Wow.
So when I married her, she still had the same name as John Howland. And John Howland was the oldest surviving male in the Plymouth Plantation colony. And his wife, Elizabeth Tilley, was the oldest living member of the. She lived longer than anybody. She was the last surviving member of the Plymouth Plantation or Plymouth colony, I should say. So my wife has that history, and one of our trips this year is we're going to England for 2 weeks. Part of our adventures. I'm going to metal detect for 4 days, and then we're going to go do 4 days in London in the museums there. Probably I'm going to do some mudlarking in the Thames River. Have you ever heard of that? They
No,
do.
but I no, but I've heard tons. I heard some kids recently. I think first time metal detecting, he just found some real treasure, and I've heard lots of story out of those UK fields, man. Where those
You never
those
know. And the
those
Roman coin.
nights.
Well, the Romans, they buried coins there. So we're going to do 4 days of metal detecting, 4 days in London, and then we're going to do 9-day trip around England and Scotland. and then come
Wow.
back to the state. So that's one of our adventures that we've lined up this year. Of course, the gathering.
Let me know when you're going. I might jump in my private jet and just shoot out and meet you.
Come on, let's go.
Yeah,
And you know what's nice?
it's got a big name on the side of it, Southwest, but I don't think they go that way.
You know what's interesting about this too is that because we do this and we have so many friends, is that we've made friends over in England, and if we get a chance, we'll get a chance to visit with them. But this is really a trip to do kind of our own little exploration. And then when it's over, I'll go back and probably spend 10 days in metal detect over there with people that I know. This is really for my wife and I to have a really good experience, traveling around England and experience some of it over there, because that's where a lot of the old world treasure is, right?
Right,
So that's where
right.
we're going to go. We're going to do that this year. But anyway, she has the heritage of the founding of the Mayflower coming over here before the United States. And one treasure that we have is in that lineage of men in the Howland family. One of them, James Nye Howland, fought in the Civil War as a Union lieutenant. And my wife has a beautiful display. She has the flintlock pistol that he carried into the Civil War. She has all of his mustering in papers. She's got his picture, his wife's picture, his medals. She's got all that into a display. So from us, from her to him, to all the way back to the Mayflower, that one little piece of history is what we have as kind of our remembrance of the history of the family.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. That is awesome. So, you know, my wife and I were just talking about yesterday is that our families really, on her side and my side, really lost connection with, the actual family members. So having that type of history and holding on to your ancestors' objects and just knowing that history is rich, man. You can't replace that. That is treasure. That is real
It
treasure.
is treasure. I love telling that story because everybody wants to talk to me. I said, "Well, let me tell you her story." She's beaming, like, and it's part of her heritage. So I'm
Well,
delighted.
history and mystery is what makes life fun and interesting, man.
Right.
If we didn't have these adventures, life would be kind of boring. Gives us something to do. I want to read a few more of these comments.
Okay. Good.
Bob G says, I used to have the old book, A Guide to Treasure in California by Thomas Penfield. I went to a lot of locations in that book. Right on, Bob.
That's
Taz
awesome.
says, get gold fever. I was born with it. Queen's treasure is in the 7 caves. Everything is in the 7 caves.
I
And
guess it is.
yeah, we're going to have to go there. Taz 11, you're going to have to take us to where you think the 7 caves are. 5 Mile Relic Hunter, man, that sounds amazing. Tough Run Metal Detecting, you're making me jealous, Mark. Uh,
Well,
Heck,
James, you can come with me anytime, bud.
yeah, he says he's going to ride in your suitcase.
All right.
Joseph Trujillo, my buddy, says, "What's up? What's up, Joe? What is I was going to ask this question, but we'll let Joe ask it now. What is a good metal detector for adult beginners?"
Adult beginners. Well, it's like anything else. First thing I would ask anybody is, just, look, tell me what your budget is, and understand that it's not just a metal detector. You're going to have a metal detector, a pinpointer, a nice shovel, a hand
Yeah,
digger, right?
yeah, oh yeah,
So you got to have a package, right?
yeah.
Um, I would say, Garrett, is out of Texas. They just came out with a real nice one for 500. Excuse me, $599. It's called the Vortex. I've got one now. All of the detectors that today that do really well, because you want one that's waterproof. You want, no matter whether it's a beginner or not, you want one that's waterproof. You want one that's has multi-frequency, so that if you're on the beach, the saltwater mineralization doesn't bother it. So their new Vortex works really well. It's $599. It works really well on the beach. Mind Lab, you're familiar with Mind Lab. You know
Yeah.
they make at the top of they make $7,000 metal detectors looking for gold in gold fields. But at the top range of what we do, there's one that's about $1,500 called the Manicore. It'll do everything you want to do. But for a beginner, what I would do is I would probably say a Mind Lab, uh, probably like they came out with a new one called the Mind Lab Xterra Elite. It's like $429. It's got the multi frequency built in. It's got a backlit screen. It's got different modes for beach, field, and things like that. So you can get a really good beginner metal detector for around $500. Then you add another $100 for a pinpointer. Um, Depending on what you're doing, $100 for a scoop, beach scoop, something like that. So you can get into this for about $700. Now you can do it for less.
Yep.
A very very beginning metal detector, a good metal detector with a pinpointer and all, you probably get for $300 or $400.
Yeah. Nocta. I don't know if you've heard of Nocta,
And,
but
and, and Nocco, I'm familiar with them too.
Nocta has got some super affordable metal
Yeah,
detectors. Simplex. I don't know if they're still making that one. I think that was
I
like
have
two
one.
hundred.
I have a
Two.
simplex.
Yeah. It's like $200, 299,
Right.
something like that. And so they're a great company that I've tested their stuff and used it before. It works great. Obviously, if you want to spend lots of money, there's OKM. They've got great stuff. Garrett, like you said, is awesome. What's the other? Does White's? My uncle had an old White's metal detector back in the
White's
day.
is
They
out of
still,
business.
yeah,
White's is
they're out
out
of
of business.
business.
Garrett bought all of their intellectual property.
Garrett did.
Uh, yeah, Garrett did.
Oh, okay.
So Garrett owns all of White's intellectual property, and they just incorporated some of that into the Vortex. But going back to going back to the different companies, what's interesting is my lab's out of Australia,
Yeah.
and they really made their name in the gold fields of Australia. So they make really good gold machines.
Right.
Garrett came out of the U.S. They're out of Texas. And of course, you have First Texas, which makes Fisher and Bounty Hunter. They're got some really good beginning work. But Note is out of Turkey, and
Yeah.
they have really good engineers over in Turkey. And they've replaced the Simplex with, I believe it's called this a triple score is what it's called now.
Yeah. 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 You're right.
And then it goes up to the Legend, which is kind of like the Legend and the Vortex and the Expedition or the Xterra Elite from Mind Lab are all in that $500 range.
Right.
That would be the area that I would recommend somebody, because if you're a beginner and you really start enjoying this, first thing you're going to do is like, I want a better metal detector. So
Yeah.
just get one in the $500 range. It'll do everything you want to do for a long time. And if you really don't like it, you could probably sell it for $400.
Right. Right.
That's what I would
Agreed.
do.
And we all want the bigger, the better. But one, do you really need that? Where are you going? Another thing, the wife and I, we have every year here in the Bay Area, at least, we're able to pay for a metal detecting card through East Bay Regional Parks. So anyone in California in the Bay Area, they actually, I think it's $20, maybe it's $40, but I think it's like $25. You can get yourself a metal detector card, and we can actually go metal detecting through the East Bay parks,
We have the
which
same
is
thing here.
yeah, which is super fun. If you like hiking, going on some hikes and then doing some metal detecting, it's
And
something.
that's a great point, Dan, because every city, county, state is different. You got to know what the laws are. And like here in Orange County, Florida, where I'm at, you can go to the Parks and Recreation, get a lifetime metal detecting permit to hunt in any Orange County park. You can go to any beach as long as it's not a federal park, because the people will come to Florida and not realize that Canaveral seashore is a national park.
Mm.
You cannot hunt on that beach.
Which doesn't
But
make sense to me because it's still the people's beach.
Well, I think a big part of that is because of what happened with the Challenger and how it
Yeah.
flew up over the ocean. A lot of that is considered a graveyard. So that Canaveral area is really off limits completely. You can't dive there. You can't metal detect there. And occasionally, we actually find little pieces of the metal from the spacecraft,
Wow. Wow.
just washed up on the beach.
Yeah. So that was my technology, I guess techniques. Since Joseph, took our question. It's a good one. Um, so hopefully, Joseph, you heard that, and Mark gave a bunch of great companies to deal with. None of those companies sponsor me at the time, right now. So I might mention them a little more if if they wanted to sponsor the Dillman family.
Well,
Um,
well, yeah, you said I could ask you questions, right?
sure.
So, what's the status on your show?
So the status on our show that we had on History Channel, as far as I know, it's on pause. Right? We've heard
Good pause. Okay.
last I heard on that show, on the Lost Gold of the Aztecs, was the show's not canceled, but they're not doing a new season right now. Now we've been filming though. We have been filming, because the show came along, and we're real treasure hunters and doing real things and have real deals with landowners. And so for us, we've still been investigating, and we're still actually at the location that we filmed at, and we've still been investigating and making new discoveries at this location, and we've been filming it. So the adventure hasn't stopped for us. So even though that the TV series right now is not happening, we've been filming. We've been documenting the amazing new discoveries that we've made, and we will either release a documentary on it. I mean, that's kind of the plan. That's what I've been working on. It's just never ending, and we're still filming. And I shared some of that footage at Moon Lake. By the way, this is
Right.
probably a great time again to mention Terry Carter and Mark and all the guys who put on the Moon Lake Gathering. They've already got it scheduled for August 14th through
The
16th,
16th. Right.
I believe. It's a
In
free
Duchesne.
event.
Yeah, in Duchesne, Utah.
Yeah, Duchesne, Utah. And look, these guys, it costs them money, and they are amazing to do this, to do it for the treasure hunting community, to do it for the Bigfoot community, the UFO community. It's for everyone. All these things that I love, and I know you love, all under one roof, and doesn't cost you, the person going, anything. I mean, it may cost you to
It's
get there,
free.
but
Yeah, it's free.
they're not charging admission. It's a free event. So I highly encourage you guys to mark your calendars, and life is passing you by, and make sure you're having some adventures in between that time that's passing by, and get out there to Moon Lake, and go have yourself an adventure. I hope to be there. The guys have invited me, and I'm 99.9% sure that I'll be there. I just need to rearrange some of my schedule to be
And
there. But you're going to be there, right?
I'll be there. Yeah, and for the people who know me, I travel very often. I go with a partner of mine, Gary Penta. Gary Penta is a miniature artist. He'll make miniature metal detectors, and
And Gary's like only this tall, and the things he makes. No, just
but
kidding. Just kidding,
I,
Gary.
what I would do is, if you're listening, I would highly recommend you go to mydetecting.com. If you want to see some amazing stuff, mydetecting.com. Gary has a website of all the different things that he's made, and the manufacturers will come to him. They'll come out with a new detector, and they'll say, "Hey, Gary, can you make me a miniature vortex, or can you make me a miniature manicore, or something like that?" So he does all of that. But we dove together looking for the Megalodon teeth. We went to Idaho for that old gold mine that we hunted on with James. So Gary and I do a lot of traveling, and so Gary will be with me this year again at the gathering event in Utah. So we'll definitely be there. We've already got our tickets. We got our hotel. So Lord willing, we'll be there.
That's it. That's it. And this year it's inside.
Yeah.
Every year previous, it's been outside. So if it rained, be ready. But this year, none of that. It's in a beautiful kind of convention center. Mark had sent me the video of the spot. Totally impressed. They're taking it to the next level, and so I hope to be there to be a big part of the show, do a presentation and do a panel. That's the hope, at least.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I got a few. Let's see. Let's
Okay.
make sure we don't miss any of these guys. Joseph says, treasure hunting. I go. If I hit it big, can I just say my great 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 grandmother passed it down or found it in my backyard?
That's what
Uh,
I would do.
I can't give any legal advice to you, Joseph. uh, all right. Nice, it's tough run metal detecting. Nice 5 mile only Nocta. Nice 5 mile. Only Nocta I have is a Simplex Ultra WHP. I won in Arkansas.
Right.
Yes. And then 5 mile says, yeah, I saw you win. I almost tackled you and stole it. Cash Valley says the gathering is going to be fun this year. I can't wait. Tough Run Metal. I'll be there again too. 5 mile Relic Hunter says, Mark, what was your best find last weekend? And I'll read these other two, and then you can answer that if we didn't already. Cash Valley, were you there last year? Question mark. And then Cash Valley. Oh, okay, they're talking to each other. Yes, it was the first time in a while that I was there. All right, so 5 mile Relic Hunter says, Mark, what was your best find last weekend?
I'm going to hang my head in shame. What happened was it was a 2 day event, and we had Saturday and Sunday. And actually, I went out on Friday. I got invited to go out on a little thing on Friday. Found a few bullets. I saw some guys find some really cool. They were bullets. They were lead bullets from the Civil War that were actually hammered into poker chips. So they had taken Civil War and smashed them down and written a 10 on it. So it was like a poker chip. I thought that was really cool. That wasn't my find. That was somebody else found that. So there was like 4 or 5 of those found, and then somebody else found a U.S. Rosette. It's a bridal rosette. It has U.S. on it, so it was a cavalry rosette from the Civil War. And then somebody found a nice Civil War breastplate. And I found a few bullets. But Saturday, I walked. I wear a Fitbit everywhere I go. I walked 22,000 steps on Saturday, and that's over 10 miles. And I found a lot of different things. Nothing that was what I would call really special. Now, I ended up giving stuff away. I mean, I'm just that. I mean, there was a lady that came up to me and said, "Hey, have you found any bullets?" I found a whole bunch of them. They're Civil War bullets, right? And so, she walked up to me and she said, it's a Civil War bullet. It's a 3 ringer, right? It's lead. It's what they were firing back in the Civil War." And I said, "Yeah, I've got some bullets." And she said, "Well, I haven't found any." And I just went, "Oh." And then she kind of walked away. And I'm like, and she said, "I really want to find a bullet." And so I just thought about it. I was like, all right. So I just walked over and I said, "Here, I want you to have this bullet, and here's a musket ball for you too." So I gave that away. I gave other stuff away.
Wow.
And I enjoy doing that. I like seeing people get, really happy. But at the end of the day, my back, a month ago, I herniated a disc in my back, and I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me on this hunt. But um, I was in so much pain, I couldn't hunt on Sunday. In fact, the guys that I was with, they all said, "Listen, if you just find them, we'll dig them for you." And I said, "No, I can't even walk." And
Wow.
it's taken me a week now. I'm just now getting over that, where my back was messed up. But we had a great time. We met a lot of wonderful people. But the one thing that I found, this is going to sound funny, that I really like, and it's not so much that I like it, is my wife loves old spoons. She collects old spoons. And I found an old sterling silver plated spoon. And I said, all right, well, at least I found something I can give to my wife. So
Oh,
that was my find of the weekend. I didn't hunt
wow.
it all on Sunday, and I saw a lot of nice finds, but it wasn't anything that I could say was a dramatic find or anything. But she loves it, so I'm happy.
Well, you know what I'm going to say, right? That
No.
was your spoon from your pet. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
well, yeah, now I know that now. That was my
um,
spoon that I lost when I crossed over from Arkansas over to Missouri.
right, right. All right, let's see. We
So
got a few. Oh,
ask
go ahead.
him ask him what his favorite find. Well, what was your favorite find? I was going to ask him what his was if he'll type
Yeah,
that in.
ask him what is. He should be listening to us right now. So that was 5 Mile Relic Hunter. So five
Right.
mile relic hunter. What was your favorite find last week?
So we'll
And
find that out. But we had a great time. The guy that put on the hunt,
oh, he said it. He said it. Mine. Here we go. He actually put a comment there before. Mine was a bullseye
oh
canteen.
oh
Bullseye
bullseye
canteen.
campaign.
Mark has left the building.
I had one. I had a bullseye canteen. I was going to show it to you. So he found one.
Yep, yep. And then he
And
also says, and an 1858 Flying Eagle 1 penny, 1 cent.
there you go. Yeah, those bullseye canteens are from the Civil War.
Wow, wow. Taz11 says, I never found a gold bar, Mark. And now I don't know
Neither
if
did I.
if
Neither did I.
he's just saying that he never found a gold bar, meaning he's found a gold bar but not telling anyone. Well, we figured you out, so we just told everyone, and you send us 20%, and we won't say anything more about it. um,
Well, yeah, so yeah, wouldn't we all love to find that elusive gold bar, one bar, but then
yeah,
you
well,
find two, and then you want three, and
yeah, in the 1980s, right there in Mexico, where they were building a bank or underneath the bank, whatever, is when they found, one of those gold bars that were said to have been from Montezuma's time. Of course, it was the Spanish who melted it down into their
right,
ingot or
right.
whatever. But that's a real story, not a make believe story. So there is treasure to find for sure. Now I know we're running out of time, but oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tell you a real quick thing. So we did an adventure in southern Utah in 2022. I have to mention him, Todd Anderson, who's a really long term treasure hunter, really good guy. Does a lot of research. Invited me out. We did 6 episodes. It's called Uncharted Expedition on YouTube. We did find the smelter, and we found what we believe is the Spanish coat button. So we knew they were in the area. We didn't find any treasure. We were looking for it. We were looking for signs for it. We did a lot of exploration in the caves and stuff like that. But for me, that was a great adventure. That was a lot of fun, and it was there in southern Utah. We know they were mining there. I mean,
Oh
what
yeah.
was going on there. So yeah, we that was one of the adventures. But I just wanted to mention that. And I also wanted to mention Todd because he came to the gathering last year, and I believe he's in northern Utah now, so he should be there as well. So if you know Todd, I wanted to just say hi to Todd while he's out there. So
Right on, right on. And
okay,
I want to ask
okay,
advice. What
okay.
advice would you have for any young or aspiring treasure hunters? You know, if what advice would you give someone who's looking to enter in to the world of treasure hunting?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I would say do a lot of reading. Like if you kind of do some Google searches on some of the well-known treasure hunters. See if they've got any books out, and then start reading what material they've put out because there's plenty of books that have been put out there. Try to focus on one area. You want to do treasure hunting on land? Do you want to do you know out where you're at? Because where you're at, Dan, in out west is completely different from where we're at over here. Because
Right.
you've got the Spanish, we've got the Spanish, but it was all ocean bound versus land bound where you're at. So you gotta decide where you want to hunt, where you want to do. Uh, Listen to podcasts like this one. You know, find out where who there's. I know of at least 6 different podcasts that talk about metal detecting, treasure hunting. So find all the podcasts, listen to those, get to know the people on there. If you have a club, if you have a metal detecting club in your area, join the metal detecting club. You'll get to know a lot of people. Now the problem is a lot of guys know a lot of stuff, especially if they've been around a long time, but they don't share it very often. So, do your research, get in a club, read books, go to events like 5 Mile Relic Hunter, Tough Run Metal Detecting. All three of us were at this event in Missouri. We all made new friends. And I'm sure that all of us will, when we go to these events, we make friends who invite us to some of the stuff that they're doing and we learn more. And that's how I ended up going out to southern Utah to be a part of Uncharted Expedition. So it's really, don't expect anybody to do work for you. You got to do a lot of work. And I'm not trying to dissuade you, but start slow, get into a club, meet people, read books, listen to podcasts, and then go to some of these events and meet people. And then that's how you get started. That's how I got started.
Yeah, great advice. Basically, everything that Mark just said, and make a plan. A lot of people, don't know how much, to co-sign what you're saying, how much time and research is involved in real treasure hunting. You can go out and metal detect, like we already shared with you. You can go to the East Bay Regional Parks. You can go to the beach. Metal detecting, you can get out there and do that. Wonderful advice on joining clubs. But real treasure hunting, when you're hunting that real ancient history treasure, research is king. As much as you can
Great.
do. My grandfather spent 16 to 18 years before he actually decided, all right, I believe I've cracked the code. Let's go to this location, and made major discoveries. So a lot of people, want to just, grab their metal detector, grab a shovel, and I'm going to find the gold today. It's happening. Now, I don't want to discourage you from thinking that because it's what keeps some of us going every day. But yeah, lots of research, and that's great advice, man. Everything that you said. Um, where Another question: where do you see the future of treasure hunting heading, especially with the advancements in technology and the increasing regulations around some of these ancient and archaeological sites?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think it's good news and bad news. I think with the new technology, and I've been in technology my whole career, and I was in software and hardware, and I've seen the advancements. So I know what's coming with artificial intelligence and all the other things. So I think from the technology standpoint, it's going to make it easier to determine what we're finding and where to find it and the history behind what we're finding. And we're learning stuff all the time. And even learning things like how far back man goes, and things like what Graham Hancock is discovering. But the other side of that is the regulation. And I think there's reasonable regulations in terms of you don't want to have people coming in and destroying sites, tearing things up. So it has to be done properly, and I believe with the right people. And I don't have anything against the archaeologists, except there are archaeologists who don't want you to touch anything, right? Even on private property. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a
If it's
balance.
if Yeah,
I
if
think
it's
there's a
not
balance.
there, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that the good news is the advancements in the technology. The bad news is the regulations are getting harder and harder and harder. And, like if they said, okay, well, we're just going to not let anybody metal detect on the beach, that would be a horrible regulation because that's a good family recreate people finding stuff, and so there has to be a balance. But I think there will be always be opportunities for treasure hunters. I think it's going to be harder from a governmental standpoint but I think it's going to be better with the technology that we have at our disposal. So if you work within the confines of the regulations and do your best to work with the government entities and get those approvals or whatever, I think you can do it. It's not easy, as you know. It's not easy, but it's going to be harder from a governmental standpoint. But it's going to be easier from a technology standpoint. That's where I see it. But I always believe that as long as man's on this earth, there's going to be plenty of treasure to find. And I'll tell you one more story regarding that. Somebody went up to Mel Fisher one time and said, "Mel, you have found millions of dollars in treasure out in the ocean. What do you think is still out there?" And he took a handful of sand and he put it on the desk. And he took a couple of grains of sand and he goes, "This is what I found. See that pile of sand? That's what's still out in the ocean. So there's plenty of treasure still out there."
There is plenty of undiscovered treasure, man, in the ocean and on land.
Right on land.
It is, yeah. It's just not 12 inches generally, underneath the top layer of dirt. It's much deeper, so it makes it that much harder to find. But
Right.
but we're finding it. People are finding it. We're finding it. Guys like you are finding it. Other treasure hunters are finding it. Um, so yeah, lots of treasure still to be found. Ancient relics apparently being discovered by remote viewers. I've always said my grandfather was a remote viewer as well with
I'm
his
going to do
psychic
some
abilities.
research on that story. I'm going to look into that story and see what that's all about. I remember hearing about it. I haven't looked into it very much, but I definitely
Yeah,
want to.
the whole declassified paper, which I haven't read the whole entire thing, is out there, and it's interesting, man. I mean, it's the Ark of the Covenant. How could anyone who is attached to any type of biblical history and ancient, you know, mysteries and not interested in the Ark of the Covenant? I mean, Indiana
Look,
Jones, come on, man.
right? And by the way,
It's-
that's probably my favorite movie series of all time. The
yeah,
next dog, the next. Oh, I've got a question for you. So we're talking about history, and it's
yeah.
the history of our country. You know what's happening next year? It's the 250th anniversary of our country, the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. I'm going to ask you a question. What happened on April 19th, 1775?
Great, man. Great. And I can't. Can I cheat really quick and just put you on hold for a minute? Then I'll let you know exactly what happened.
I'll tell you
But
because it's really
something with
important.
George Washington, and all right.
Well, so that was the day of the beginning of the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
So today is April 8th. So in 11 days, we will have the 250th anniversary of the beginning of the Revolutionary War, which began the fight for our independence of our country. So we signed it on 1776, but that war started 250 years ago, 11 days from now.
Wow. And isn't that interesting? Because the ancients knew, as I know now and believe, everything is a cycle. The cycles are repeating. We see,
You and I
our
talked about
our life is a cycle, right? We go to sleep, we wake up, the sun is shining, the moon's out. It's winter, summer, spring, fall. We're in cycles, and the civilizations have clearly been in cycles. That's what the ancients taught, and here we are. It's just interesting. I don't care what side of the political aisle anyone's on, if they're on any part of it, but it is so interesting that we're at this heightened atmosphere with all sides and what's happening, and we're at that 250-year cycle. So
yeah.
it means something to me.
I thought you'd be interested in that. I wanted to just mention that while we were on the call.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? I know you promised me an hour of your time. I've now taken two, which I'm grateful
Yeah,
to have taken from you, but I don't want to be rude.
look, Dan. I consider it a blessing to be here with you. I'm thrilled that we met last year. That we got a chance. I cried when you were talking about your granddad. I don't know if you remember that. You
Oh
gave
yeah.
me a hard time. It was hard for me to do my presentation right after you because I was thinking about the real treasure of our families.
Right.
So I was really happy to meet you last year. I'm thrilled that you invited me on tonight. I hope people enjoyed it. All I can say is if there's people out there listening to this and they want to go on or would like to invite me on an adventure, I'll look at everything and anything, and if it makes sense, I'll do it. I'm looking for adventures, and I'm ready to go. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Well, thank you again, and hopefully we could do this again, and we'll hopefully be doing something together at Moon Lake, in the next couple months. So let me let's see. Someone said just really quick before we go. Um, Price Productions. I'm late again. It's a trend here lately. Sad face. Well, you know what, Price Productions, thanks for joining. It doesn't matter if you're late, you showed up. Taz says focus, research, and then forget it all and go with your gut. That's probably talking about that advice to up and
Yeah,
coming treasure
exactly.
hunters. Cache Valley Detectorist, I love research. Old dusty libraries are cool. I agree.
I agree.
Um, Good old Mel, tough run metal detecting, says today's the day, he says. Cache Valley Detectorist says, Mark, what do you think of the British model of treasure recovery? So maybe that.
Absolutely love it. Love it. I wish they would do that in the United States, and when we go over there, whatever we find, the British government, they have an agency that looks at everything you have. And if they feel like it's historically important, they will buy it from you. They will appraise it and they'll buy it from you.
Wow.
Now, the thing is the museums over there have gotten so much stuff that I've been told that probably 99% of stuff you find, you will keep. They don't give it back to you right away. What they do is it stays over there for 6 months to a year, and they evaluate it. And then whatever they don't want, they give it back to the person who's your agent, and they send it to you, or you pick it up the next time you go over. But if you have an agreement with a landowner, whatever that agreement is, whether you find it, you pay them, you keep everything, or you split it, or whatever, the government gives you the permission to dig. You find it. If it's a museum worthy treasure, they'll buy it from you. I love that system, and I wish
Wow.
everybody could do that. Yeah, they
Yeah,
will
they.
work with.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the British government will work with you, and yeah, they don't like go out and arrest you because you've been metal detecting. You work it out with the landowner, but you also have to let them see what you found, and I love
You know,
that.
I wonder if there's something that we could do. I think our community, when I say our community, treasure hunting community, even paranormal, and just kind of getting Bigfoot and everyone together. And I wonder if there's some lobbying that could be tried again here in the United States to try to change that. So that the government isn't, they're not penalizing us. Once again, it's our land, and really, it's our Native American brothers and sisters, which I claim descendancy. Uh, but we should there. Maybe we can get together, and maybe we can make a change happen still here in the United States. Has anyone? Do you know of anyone even thinking down that route to lobby Congress?
Yeah, it's been discussed. The challenge we have is British is all one piece of land. I mean, of course, you got Ireland, Scotland, and Great Britain, but it's all one, and they make the rules for everybody. But now you got 50 states. Even
Mm.
if you made a federal law, you still got to deal with the state. The state may say, and every state's going to have their political environment of what they believe, no, you can't touch that. Like in Florida, the archaeologists have gotten the state to say that the law is you can't take anything out of a Florida river older than 50 years old. So if I found a 64 dime, silver dime, technically I'm not supposed to take that out. Now, the different, the exception to that is any shark's tooth that you find that's not in a state park, that's in like a Florida river, not in a state park, Take all the shark's teeth you want. You want to take a fossil? You get a $5 fossil license from the University of Florida. So all these different laws and regulations, you got to know them all. So even if you lobbied Congress and you were able to do it on federal land, every state would probably challenge you and say, no, you can't do it in our state, whatever the case. So it's a very difficult process. And so you got to do it by county, by state, like that. And so it's very difficult. And the archaeological society, if you want to call it that, they have a lot of power and they're all paid by the government.
Yeah.
And so, they make the decisions about who's going to do what, when, and where.
Well, there's still lots of federal land across the United States. So maybe, and I could just be wishful thinking. It's the treasure hunter in me who thinks that I can hit the pot of gold. Then maybe there's
a lot of BLM land.
That's what I'm saying. And you know what? I happen to know of several places on BLM land that need to be investigated.
It's still legal to, prospect for gold. So,
yeah.
You just got to know the rules.
All right, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I just want to say what these guys said at the end. Anytime Mark is what Taz 11 said to you. Great show. Glad to be able to actually catch it mostly. That was tough run metal detecting. Thank you. 5 Mile Relic Hunter. Great show tonight. Thanks, Dan and Mark. Well, thank you guys. And I thank Mark. And we'll get together soon. Moon Lake. 2025.
I'll be here before you know it, Dan. Hey, thanks for having me. It was good to see you.
All right. Thank you. Talk to you guys soon. All
right. Take care.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm going to end.